don't think you would know this from what is put out there in the media, but fewer and fewer people are dying from climate disasters. Why? We're more resilient and we know how to adapt. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Scott, for having me be part of this program. I often think I have the best job in the world. I think that most of the time, for two reasons. One is being an academic is a job where generally you can freely innovate, think of ideas, explore new things. And the second reason is it gives me an opportunity to interact with the brightest young minds we have. And so this is a great opportunity to spend some time with you. Kudos to you for getting into the program, which is very competitive. And it's just fantastic to be here. So as Josh said, I'm an economist, and I've been focused on environmental issues for about 25 years. I teach courses on the environment and the global economy. I teach courses on natural resource economics and energy. I was trained in a PhD program where I have a standard economics degree, but as part of my fellowship, I took graduate coursework in natural science classes, including applied ecology. And that always matched my personal interests. You know, I always wanted to spend time outdoors in the wilderness. I made some uncontractable commitment with my future self to like sleep in a tent. More in my life than in a hotel room, and I think by the time I was about 30, a number of hotel stays passed tent stays. But that, you know, so my personal interests kind of frame my academic pursuits. And here at Hoover, I've been involved in launching a program with my colleague Terry Anderson called Markets, Mandates, and Incentives for the Environment. And I've learned over my years of research that markets and incentives are really critical for improving environmental conditions in a way that's cost effective and even can pass a benefit cost analysis. So that's a little background on me. More recently, I've become interested in this really fundamental question, which is where do beliefs about the environment come from? I'm interested in this question as a parent. So I have a 14 and a 16-year-old daughter, a 14-year-old son, and I'm interested in why do they think what they think about the environment? Why do undergraduates that I teach that come in my classes, many without any economics background, why do they have their beliefs about the environment? Why do graduate students, so particularly young people? And you know, surely you've heard about this phenomenon called climate anxiety. So there's a lot of pessimism out there about the state of the environment, and I see it in some of my students, even sometimes in my kids. There was a survey, not totally representative, that surveyed 10,000 16 to 15-year-olds globally and asked them questions about their anxieties and concerns. 45% said that climate concerns affect their daily life negatively. 45%. 75% said the future is frightening to them. Why do they think that? And I guess if I was trying to be uplifting to such an audience, I would say, hey, I think there's three reasons for optimism. One is things are probably not as bad as they're portrayed. Two, societies in the past have overcome big environmental challenges, reversed patterns that looked detrimental in the past. And then I'd say third, future generations, your generation, but past future generations, have had more and more capacity to innovate. And so they've solved problems. And I continue to think those are great causes for optimism. So here's a few examples. And I have students in my class that don't know this history very well, which surprises me. So one example is with air quality. So the left-hand side is an image of smog in Los Angeles Basin. around 1960, and 2021, of course, is contemporary times. A little bit affected by COVID, but the big point remains. In 1960 or so, there was about 30 million annual tons of SO2, sulfur dioxide, emitted into the air. Today, there's less than 2 million annually emitted, so just enormous improvements in air quality. We could say the same thing about water quality. Water quality in the US, around 1960, more than 40%, almost half of the rivers were deemed unfishable because of pollutants in the water. Today, that number is closer to 15%. So air and water quality, I mean, just enormous societal challenges at the time have largely been solved. We could talk about population. So just in 50 years, the concern has flipped that humanity is going to run out of food to eat. We're going to have mass starvations because we have this uncontrollable growth in population, which scholars were writing about and sounding the alarm bells. Today, of course, the problem is there's greater concerns about population decline, okay? You can think about biodiversity and rewilding. We hear a lot about loss of biodiversity, which is largely centered on loss of amphibians and not other species, but I have an image of a bald eagle here. So in around 1960, there was only about 400 nesting pairs of bald eagles in the lower 48. How many there are today is over 300,000 in the lower 48. They're like seagulls in Alaska. They're everywhere. So huge successes in repopulating of species like the eagle, like the wolf, which is something I study, and one of my readings was about wolves. That was optional for you. But wolves were basically exterminated from almost all of the northern hemisphere. And in the last 50 years, there's been rewilding, so wolves are spreading across parts of North America, parts of Europe. They're being reintroduced or considered to be reintroduced in Japan. So there's pros and cons of this, but this is the spread and the rewilding of biodiversity. I actually got out of control thinking of examples of these last night, so I'm going to share all of them with you because they're interesting to me. So condors return California skies after being gone nearly a century. The sea otter is being reintroduced in new places in the Pacific coast. Bison are being reintroduced in the UK. It's not just big charismatic animals. Butterflies, previously locally extinct, are being reintroduced in the UK. England's first wild beavers after 400 years. You know, beavers were valued for their pelts. Driven down to near extinction in some places, they're being reintroduced, being added to the ecosystems. Cheetahs in Malawi. I can't pronounce this, but cute horses in Russia are being reintroduced, and less cute in my mind. Snakes are being reintroduced. So again, it's not just charismatic predators. And look at this, Tasmanian devils. These guys look like they could cause some serious problems, but they are being reduced after 3,000-year absence in Australia's mainland. Okay, I'm almost done with these, but they're so interesting. Jaguars being reintroduced in South America. Crocodiles in China. Vultures play an important ecological role. They kill carrion, which can spread disease, so we're starting to recognize that, and they're being reintroduced. South Korea is bringing back bears in a densely populated country, and so this is, you know, so these are like the loss of species was previously thought irreversible, and it's not. So these are causes for optimism, even climate. So we hear only really bad news about climate. But here's some good news, and it's a chart showing global annual mortality from climate-related disasters, so floods, hurricanes, wildfires, droughts. And so I don't think you would know this from what is put out there in the media, but fewer and fewer people are dying from climate disasters. Why? We're more resilient, and we know how to adapt, and we're richer. We're way richer than we've been. So So climate is changing. There's real climate effects. But if you care about the bottom line impact on even low-income societies, there's way less risk of mortality and catastrophe than there used to be. Okay, so so there's good reasons to be optimistic. Okay, and so here's a puzzle. So if environmental conditions are not so dire, what drives pervasive pessimism? What drives it? Why are 75% of these survey respondents really scared about the future for environmental reasons? Well, I don't know the answer, but I'm engaged in research to try to learn it. And one step in that process is just first trying to understand descriptively how are environmental conditions being portrayed. Are they being portrayed objectively? Are they being portrayed in other ways with normative feelings? Are they being portrayed subjectively? And so I would like to study this. I would like to look at children's books over time. We have the ability to do text analysis. What are we saying to children over time and across places about environmental conditions? What is the media doing? Like you can read media reports, and how well does it align with science? Certainly political speeches, we wouldn't expect those to be objective. We'd expect those to be quite subjective. But academic science articles, that's what I'm going to talk about for the rest of our time together. Because if any venue should be objective, that is it. It's peer-reviewed science articles. So how are environmental conditions portrayed? Is it objective? Is this changing over time? Is subjective portrayal more influential? So like, are there rewards for being subjective? So that's what I want to spend the rest of the time